Hi, folks. Let's talk sex. Break the ice right there. Now, some of you, how many of you were here? James and Debbie, I know you were. Alan. I didn't even think, did I see Mean Jean in here? There she is. She may have showed up. When I was here 2 years ago, yeah, and spoke on sexual relationship and marriage, some of you were there. Okay, do you remember everything that I said? Okay, so you'll know when I'm repeating everything that I did, because I will repeat. In fact, as Adam and I were talking about what exactly he wanted to have accomplished here, he said that he wanted to be able to help the parents know what to do in their own relationship that would help their kids in their relationship as they grow up. And so my idea was, I want to be able to present something that I don't have to study for. And so that's what I got. Here, I've got it. I do this presentation in short version almost every month whenever I do the marriage intensives out at the Hideaway. This expanded version that I'm going to do this week and next week, it really is a lot like what you heard 2 years ago, but I know you guys can't remember that, and it was worth repeating in a lot of respects. Now, why would I even want to talk about this? And that is because I believe that kids, when they are younger, they don't necessarily think as much as they feel. They're all about feeling. And whenever we are in a marriage that is giving them very, very positive feelings about what's going on between mom and dad and the environment that's happening, they are getting an idea of what relationship is all about. And what we're talking about tonight is not just how to have a healthy sexuality, but what we're hoping to do is be able to transpose this into these kids' lives to where they can have a great sexual, intimate relationship with their spouse, whoever that might be. There are two things that whenever we are brought into this world that we are asking the world. And we're watching our parents, we're watching our teachers, our preachers, our pastors, we're watching our coaches, our piano teachers. We're looking all throughout the world, and we are gathering information as a little one on these two basic questions. And how we interpret those questions depends or determines a lot about ourselves and how we think we fit in this world. The very first question is this: am I loved? Am I loved? If all we do is get messages that say, you are wonderful, you are special, you are significant, we think you're the most important thing in the world, we like spending time with you, then they're going to grow up with a great self-esteem. If they hear messages, and this is one of the great things, or sad things really, is that it only takes one negative message, one time, from a complete stranger, and that gets locked into that kid brain. The very primitive brain of a child. And if they hear somewhere that says, you're not important, you're stupid, you're insignificant, we don't like being around you, then they're going to have what we call a violation of love. It's funny how we get those messages, because I remember I was about 4th grade, and we had a great neighborhood. And this neighborhood was filled with kids, and one of the things that we wanted to do was put on a play. And so we get all the kids together, and I know that I need to get my line, so I go down to Pam's house, and I put my face on the screen, and I just look inside, and I can't see anything because those screens are dark. Yeah, some of you go, don't look inside. No, it was okay. I couldn't see anything. And I say, Pam, can I have the scripture? And I heard Pam's mom, who I can't even tell you what she looked like, and she was not an important part of my life, but she laughed. And she said, little Wib said scripture instead of script. I feel humiliated. Now, as a kid, did I know what that word was? No. But that feeling of I am stupid immediately began to set in. I am stupid. Now, being raised by a dad who was overly critical, and also, since All in the Family was on TV and I was meathead and big dummy, what do you think those messages were? And so I began to realize that I had this violation of love, and it wasn't feeling good. And so in a very large area of my life, I did not feel good about me. Now, do you think that affected my marriage in any way? Do you think that affected sometimes how I interrelate to her and maybe how my kids feel about our interaction? Sure it does. It can't help but affect it. And then the other question that we have to ask is, am I safe? Which, by the way, I want to go back to, am I loved? You know, I had a client not too long ago who said, I got good messages about me, but I heard my mom continually criticize my dad and tell everybody how stupid he was and how incompetent he was. And you know what? I began to almost take that on as me. You see, we think we can get away because we're not just talking to the kids. They are making, through that kid-like brain, they are making ideas of who they are and how they fit in the world. And even though it's not directed at them, they get it. The second question is, who do I trust? Am I safe? Is my environment dependable, reliable, trustworthy? Do the people in my environment have my best interest in heart, and do they always want to do what is best for me? If that is great, then they will wake up and they will say, you know what? I trust the world. I trust people. I feel good about myself. I can accept. I can listen. I can be open. I can be vulnerable. I can be transparent. But when they get a message that says, you know what? Your environment's not trustworthy. You can't count on the people around you. They're going to let you down. They don't have your best interest at heart. And again, it might not happen directly to them, but if they are perceiving it take place, that issue of just not feeling safe is going to affect them significantly. It's going to affect them powerfully. That's what divorce does. I was listening to a case not too long ago. A divorce happens, 4 years old. What happens to the kid's world? The kid all of a sudden remembers, wow, my world is not safe. All of a sudden it starts settling out, and for 7 years, everything's okay, except this child is left in the care of two immature adolescents who basically torture him while mom is gone, poor single mom, trying to make the best she can. But again, his world's not safe. And then, not only that, all of a sudden, at about 12, 13, he's sitting at home, and mom says, here's your new dad. His world is not safe. It's not dependable. And so what happens? He holds back. He's not open. He's not transparent. Do you think that has any effect on the sexual relationship and the intimacy in the marriage? It's huge. It's huge. So what I want to share with you guys today is this idea of how to really have a healthy sexual relationship in marriage. And hopefully, because of that, that's going to transcend out of the marriage into the lives of these kids, and they're going to see, and they're going to feel, all is right with the world. Let me show you how that looks. You'll recognize, those of you who are here before, you'll recognize this cycle. You remember that? And did everybody get one already? Adam? Chop, 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 chop. The number one reason why the sexual relationship is not a good relationship in a marriage, the number one reason is this very first area that we're going to talk about. It's not performance. It's not frequency. It's not intensity. It has everything to do with how is the marriage before you get to the bedroom. It's all about that. It's interesting that whenever a couple is having trouble in their marriage, you know what is the number one problem that they come in presenting often? The sexual relationship. Do you know when everything is good in the relationship? You know how important the sex part of it is in the marriage? It's about 5 or 6. Doesn't mean it's not important. Doesn't mean it's not valuable, but it's not a big problem. It's just there. It's part of the entire arrangement. And so let's figure out how to do this. So the atmosphere is what we're going to talk about. When we talk about atmosphere, there's several things that we're going to talk about. And the very first thing is, of course, what is an intimate marriage? You know, I love this. This comes from Christopher McCluskey and his book, When Two Become One. He's given me full permission to use this however I want to use it, and so I've been using the fire out of it. One of the things that is so important about this is that notice that the quadrants first are not straight lines. And that means you don't go from, okay, our relationship is great, so let's go to arousal. And I mean, it doesn't happen like that. You're going to just gradually smear into all of these areas, and that's why those curves are there. We are going to deal with the atmosphere tonight. That's all we're going to deal with. And the next week we'll deal with the other 3. That's integral. So what do we mean by an intimate marriage? It's why we say there's a difference between having sex and making love. You can have sex and never make love. And the only way you make love is if the marriage is intimate, if it's close. Now, how do you have an intimate marriage? It kind of goes to that very same thing that I was talking about before, and that is, well, let's look at this. How do you have intimacy? Where you have intimacy is openness, vulnerability, transparency. You tell the truth. You initiate contact with each other. You don't wait on the other person. We'll talk about capacities for intimacy in just a second. We're talking about just being open, if nothing else. And folks, you cannot be open. You cannot be vulnerable unless it's safe. Unless it's safe. Have you ever considered how unsafe you might be to your partner? I'm not saying in bedroom. I'm saying outside bedroom. When you're calling names, you're continually criticizing, if you're yelling, that is not safe. If you are withdrawing and you're hiding or you're pouting, those are not safe. You know, we spend a lot of time saying, you know, we looked at all these ball players now and the violence they have with their spouses or their girlfriends, and believe me, they're wrong. They're absolutely wrong to have that kind of violence. But you know what is just as damaging? Withdrawal. Neglect. Just ignoring. Because it is still a violation of trust. You can't have a great marriage unless you're in the marriage. And if you're not in the marriage, then you're not safe. So when you talk about safety, let's talk about 3 aspects of safety. First aspect of safety is basically physical. And that is, am I going to have physical harm done to me? Can I be okay with being close and knowing that you're not going to attack me? In fact, this goes into some larger conversations about what is domestic violence. Believe me, if your kids are watching domestic violence, they are experiencing a violation of trust. Their world is not safe. And it will affect them all throughout their life until they come into my office and I can fix them. Or they have a violation of love because they'll watch this or they'll see this and they'll make an interpretation that I'm responsible, I'm not good enough, I'm the reason why this is taking place, I'm a failure. That doesn't make sense to us as adults, but as kids, those brains, it's happening like that. So physical safety is one of them. The other kind of safety is emotional safety. And that is, of course, can we have a conflict without you just escalating all the time? One of the most damaging things in a relationship, again, we're talking about how is the marriage before you get into the bedroom. One of the most damaging things you can do in a marriage is become deregulated on a regular basis. Do you know what I mean by that? Throwing a fit. Yeah! I mean, you can't take any kind of comment and you're yelling and you're screaming and you're getting defensive or you're withdrawing. All of those are signs of not being able to personally regulate yourself. Here's what it takes to have a great marriage. One person who knows how to regulate themselves, another person who knows how to regulate themselves, then they connect. If you don't know how to regulate yourself, you're not going to be able to connect. You're not safe. So if you're finding yourself, and not only this, a lot of times in a lot of marriage stuff that we read, we expect the other person to regulate us. I'm not being understood, and until you go through these hoops, I believe I have the right to act like a horse's patoot all I want. You never earn the right to be irresponsible. You got to learn to regulate yourself. And that's what's causing a safe environment. And the other one is commitment. Just imagine what it would be like, and you don't think your kids hear this, but if every time you have an argument says, well, why don't you just leave? Why are you even here? Or the old yo-yo. They're gone for a couple of days, and then they come back. And they're gone for a couple more days, and then they come back. What is that child learning about his environment? Class? It is not safe. It is not dependable. The people in my world are not trustworthy. And again, what I want you guys to do is I just want you to start thinking about, well, holy cow, if that's what they're feeling, we're here to talk about helping these kids in a healthy sexuality. I tell you, this is a direct effect on them. You give them a safe environment that is pouring truth and love into these kids, they'll be great companions. You rob them of that, and they're going to have trouble. So then there's also two kinds of marital commitment. And I had somebody in my office the other day just say this, and I just felt like coming over and giving them a big old hug. There's a difference. The first kind of commitment is basically saying, I'm committed to the covenant. I'm committed to staying married. I'm not going anywhere. I said I'd be married. That's it. But you know what? If you don't have this second kind, and that is I'm committed to the relationship. I'm committed to making it the very best relationship I can make. We are not going to run away from problems. We're going to deal with them. We're going to treat each other with honor and respect, and we're going to have the very best relationship we can. You will never have a good marriage unless you do that. And so you can say you're committed all the time, but if you're not working on the marriage, making it great, you're not committed to the relationship. So, what's the attributes of committed couples? I'm going to go through this real quick. Romanticizes the past, vision of hope for the future. Us is a priority. I want you to picture this too. Just ask yourself this question. If your marriage was a child that needed love, encouragement, nurture, play, feeding, laughing, holding, if your marriage was a child, what shape would it be in? Would it be undernourished? Or would it be thriving? Because when you talk about marriage, the same amount of time and energy it takes to raise a child, you have to put in your marriage. Because if you don't, that marriage will not thrive. So you got to do it. Willing to practice for sacrifice for the other options ignored. In other words, you forget about affairs, you forget about other people, atmosphere of forgiveness and understanding and acceptance. So I want to go on. This also comes out of Patrick Carnes' Capacities for Intimacy. And by the way, if you guys want a copy of these, Adam will have these available for you so you don't have to just scurry and try to write all these down. The 6 capacities in intimacy are this. Initiate. And this is where you're just not expecting the other person to do all the motion themselves, that you give as well. A relationship, in order for it to thrive, is going to have a balanced give and take. It's just not going to be a take. It's not going to be a take. I just want to receive. I'm just going to sit here and receive. Don't expect me to give. I'm just going to receive. But this is going to be initiative. The other one is presence. And that means when you're home, you're home. You're engaged in the family. You're not someplace else. You're not going texts. You're not playing Facebook. You're not Candy Crush, all that type of stuff. When you are with your family, you're with your family. One of the craziest thing I ever saw was a family of 3. Husband and wife and a teenage child. And they go to a restaurant and they all have a book and they're reading it. It's crazy. It's even worse is they all have phones. And they all got their faces down. I love what some people do, and that is they put all the phones in the middle of the table. Especially with friends. Put all the phones in the middle of the table, and whoever picks up their phone first during the meal has to pay for the meal. By the way, there's a great article in the Huffington Post, and that had to do with addictions. And, we often think that it's just a chemical addiction. You get hooked, that's it. They were making a huge link between that addiction and isolation. You put people from Vietnam came. Were there a lot of heroin addicts? Yes. Who came from that? But the ones who still took heroin and came from over at Vietnam and weren't addicts were people who came home to a great support system. Lots of friends, everything was great. The ones who struggled were those who shut down, withdrew, hid, isolated. Great research. If you want that, you can email me and I'll give you that. The other one is completion, and that means you're dealing with issues. You're not just letting them float out there. Vulnerability, you're letting your heart be known to the person, and you are nurturing, not just receiving nurturing, but you are giving nurturing. And I know that there's also people who don't mind giving nurture, but they don't want to receive nurture. It is a two-way street. No fair having one-way valves in your marriage. You got to give and take. No marriage will survive when it's out of balance and only one person is giving and the other person's receiving. It will not survive. And again, I want to go back. Do you think your kids will see that? Do you think your kids see how to do relationship by watching you? Okay, and the last one is honesty, which, of course, you would think so. The next one is mature lovers. And what I mean by mature lovers is pretty simple, and that is it's a matter of not being junior high. Holy cow. Not being crass and vulgar like you're in a locker room, but treating each other with respect and honor in every word that you say. It is not blushing in the presence of your spouse that you've known forever. It is dealing with issues as they come up, being able to communicate with them clearly. That when somebody says, not tonight, that the other person doesn't throw a fit or pout. That's to you guys. Or vice versa. Sometimes it'll be, what's the matter? You don't love me? You're rejecting me. I don't feel good enough. No, it's just, no, not tonight. Well, when will it be? Some of you laughing because you've done that. But it's ridiculous. But the reason why they do that, folks, and this is where I've come from right now, is people do their unhealthy behavior because of pain. Because they're struggling with rejection, not feeling good enough, worthless, inadequate, rejected, abandoned. That's why they do dumb stuff. That's why they do dumb stuff. Next thing, whenever we talk about mature lovers, we're talking about a freely give and receive love. We talked about that. We're talking about the fruit of the Spirit coming out. There is a great book that I finished reading It's called After You Believe. It's one of those deep theological books that I drudged through because I had to. It was part of an assignment that I had. I can't even tell you who wrote it. N.T. Wright. And what I loved about it was it basically said, what is our purpose on this earth from the time I become a Christian to the time I die? What is my purpose? And I really only have one. And that is to become more like Jesus. It is to build character like Jesus. And whenever I have people in my office, they want to know, well, what do I do? What do I need to do in order to make my marriage better or have a great sexual relationship? And I said, well, let's not worry about doing right now. How about being for a little bit? Who do you want to be? And I love also he goes on and says, we're all about character, and character is whenever you make the right decision after the right decision after the right decision after the right decision after the right decision, and you keep making that right decision, and then all of a sudden that becomes a part of your character, and then crisis occurs. Like, for instance, your wife or your husband starts yelling at you, or they say no, or may they leave, and all of a sudden, the very thing you've been practicing on in your character, you do it, and it's second nature. And you didn't even realize how you got there because it becomes so much a part of you. When I think about what we need to do with our kids, I think it's more about, instead of teaching them how to behave, I think it's about teaching them how to have character. Just think about that. Gentle and compassionate, goes without saying. Delay gratification or give lovingly. And that's part of mature love. It's not all about I want it and I want it now. Sometimes the delay, the postponing, builds up the excitement that is so important in a sexual relationship. And no, I'm ready. Let's go. No? Tomorrow night. Let's plan on tomorrow night. And that's a mature lover. Somebody who can do that. And next is to, like I said, be respectful, not crass. A little quote that I have, I'll give you that later, but I want to go on to this. When we talk about ways to destroy desire, and this is all a part of the environment. I'll tell you what I want to do, because I know my time, we were looking at this thing, so I want to get past all of that. I want to do this right here. I want to take a look at these things. What gets in the way of that environment for it not to be the very best it could be? Well, we've already talked about lots of things. Well, let's talk about some very practical things. Privacy is huge. I don't know what it was about my son, who's now 25 years old and married, and little Colton, if you knew Colton. But for some reason, I could put landmines, I could put crime tape, I could put, cones, orange cones in front of my bedroom, and in the most inopportune time, he'd be coming and knocking on my door. That's a mood buster. It's definitely a mood buster. And privacy is very important when it comes to the sexual relationship and making love. And when you're in an environment, I don't know how they did it on Little House on the Prairie. I have no idea how they did it. Oh, I do too. Lots of walks in the woods. What do you say we go on a walk in the woods? Yeah. But privacy is an important factor. Also, what's important is energy. This is especially important for the female. We're going to talk about the arousal state next week. But the reality is, a guy can be underneath the car, changing oil, head to toe in grease, and he can make love. He's ready. Much more complex for the female. And guys, the sooner you realize that, the better. Even if they are working outside the home, most women are still taking 75% of the responsibilities in the home when they get home. Okay? And so they are carrying a huge load. These super women are doing that. And for guys, if you come home, flop yourself down on the couch, yell for a drink, and watch TV, you are in trouble. I'll see you, and I am available, but I am not cheap. Get off your butt and help your wife with all the things that they need to. You got kids, helping out with the dishes. My wife and I have always had an arrangement that if she cooks, I clean. Give and take. You know, here's what's interesting about that trust thing. I'm going to go back to the violation of trust again, what makes it so important. And kids look at this. I had somebody in my office not too long ago said, well, I was raised, and he just yelled out that old traditional, what a man would do and what the woman would do, and the man, would come home, and he just thought that that's the way you're supposed to do it. And that wasn't working for them in that particular time. I forget what I was going to say, but it was brilliant, and I'll think of it in just a second. I know what it was. When there's a violation of trust, there is never a time, whenever it comes to a balanced give and take, that it's always like this. She gives as much as I give. It's never like that. It's always like this. I'm giving a little bit, she's giving a little bit. And we go back and forth. And what makes it good is that if I am like this, if my wife is giving a lot, even for a long time, what makes it okay for her is the fact that she trusts me to make it up. That's that trust. I can count on him. He's going to have my best interest at heart. And even though I'm giving a lot right now, I know my sweet, wonderful husband is going to do just fine. He's going to get all that back. And what really hurts is when all of a sudden it gets like this and it gets stuck. It doesn't move. Or maybe somebody gets entitled and they don't feel like they should move. Well, that I'm the man of the house and this is the way it's going to be. That's a violation of trust just right there. Just right there. So, when we talk about energy, we're talking about taking care of our spouses in that regard. Anticipation is also so very important. How do you think our kids feel when they see mom and dad flirting with each other? Grossed out? They say they're grossed out. I think they do too. I think they do too. I mean, they're watching, a healthy flirting. I mean, you're not stripping and, cleaning off the dinner table and making love in front of them. And if you are, we need to have a talk. But they see the flirting, and they see that mom and dad have that twinkle in their eye, and there might not be anything sexual, but they see that mom and dad are in love with each other, and they're seeing that kind of reaction. How many of you were raised in a family where you saw that between your mom and dad? Okay, just look around. How many is there? Okay? And the question that I would have then would be, how did that affect you? How did you know how to express? Was that awkward for you in a marriage relationship to be able to do that? And so that part is going to be very important, that balance, give and take. Also with the anticipation, if you wait for spontaneity to hit, that's whenever all the planets line up. The mood is there. Everybody's in a good mood. All issues are resolved. Everything's great. And we're just ready to go all of a sudden. It'll never happen. Anticipation sometimes means planning. And I think it's very fair for the kids to know, you know what, this is mom and dad's night. They don't have to know everything that's going on there, but they know mom and dad How many of you had a kid that whenever you and your spouse were hugging in the middle of the kitchen, just hugging each other, and one of the kids came in and tried to separate you? Okay? That wasn't because they didn't like what they see. It's because they felt left out. That's all it was. They're not saying, no, I don't want mommy and daddy together. I want you to divorce. No, that's not what they're saying. They said, no, I want to marry mommy. I'm feeling left out. You hug anyways. And you say, no, this is, you can hug with us if you want to, but no, this is our time. And so to be able to do that in an environment that is going to be anticipation and flirting and carrying on, and sometimes it means that you plan. And this is where when you realize that you're tired, you got a headache, you got stress, but you still know the importance of making love with each other. Not just having sex, but making love. You are going to plan it, and you're going to anticipate that wonderful event. We're going to talk a little bit about arousal next time, and we're going to deal with some very specific things with that. So I think I'm going to leave that there. The next one is initiation. Again, in any relationship, you're going to have one person who initiates more and the other one receives more. That's normal. Hardly ever you're going to have a balanced. Everybody's receiving and initiating the same. The problem comes in a marriage whenever, let's say for instance, one is initiating all the time, and then this one doesn't initiate, and because they're not initiating enough, they are going to initiate more, and pretty soon, if you can just imagine this little two-man sailboat here, and they're trying to keep this boat balanced, you understand? And so it's okay if they're up here where they're a little bit of both, but when they're laying way out flat and they're parallel to the water, they're keeping the boat balanced, but it's unhealthy. It's stuck. To have a healthy relationship, there's going to be that balance, give and take. But you're always going to have one that's going to initiate more. And then it's also important that the initiation is also received. And if it's not received that night, that it's dealt with very gently and kindly. And like I said, maybe suggest, how about tomorrow? How about the weekend when I'm not so stressed? How about tomorrow after you put the addition on the house or something like that? And the next one is mutual consent. I have a disdain for the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper is the person who in the marriage, their way is always the way. Now, I have to tell you that usually it is, I hear a lot of females that are gatekeepers. No, if I don't feel like it, we ain't having it. No. And it becomes almost a punishment. It's a form of control. And there's another word for it. It's called, hang on, it's going to come up. Destructive entitlement. I feel entitled to act this way because you're not making me feel certain. So I feel very competent to do that. And it is a terrible way to have a relationship. The other way would be for the man to always get his way. Boy, I've heard some stories. Guys that want to make love 3 or 4 times a day, and they don't believe they are sex addicts at all. They just have a high sex drive. And their wives are agreeing to do that, and those wives are feeling used, but they will not say anything. It's mutual consent. Mutual consent. And that also goes with what a couple does, also has to be mutual consent. Now, next time when we're here, we're going to be talking about more along the line of arousal in the state. But you guys have any questions about what I've said tonight? At all? Cluck, 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 cluck. It's too late. It's too late. So let me ask you this. If you just take that part right there, because that is the part, guys, that the kids see. It really is. That's the part the kids see. From your experience, having grown up in an environment, or maybe even as you are providing an environment for your kids right now, but even as you remember growing up in your environment, to what effect does what I've said tonight, you believe, have on your kids? I don't care what area you pick. To what extent you think it has an effect on your kids? I'm a therapist. I'm okay with silence. Yeah, so you dedicate yourself. We're going to deal with issues. We're not going to quibble. Yeah. Now, let me go down the road a little bit, because here's what can happen with that. Is that I witnessed the quibbling. I'm decided not that our family's not going to do that. And so I'm not saying you do this, but I'm just going to take it out. So anytime my husband and I, my spouse and I, start to quibble, what happens inside of me? Any guess? Pardon? Shut down, withdrawal, get anxious. And so what would they then have a tendency to do? Hold it inside. Listen, just keep the peace. We're not going to deal with issues if it's going to be quibbling. And so when we talk about what the kids might see, they would see, oh, in our family, we avoid issues. Or the person who quibbles the most wins. So, you know, if they see that violation of trust there, it could take place. What else? What are the insights? It's a great insight.
I guess what strikes me is none of us grow up in completely healthy environments. Nobody.
Right.
So the bottom line is, it seems like everything you're saying, and it makes sense, but it seems like for every side you have here, you're also going to have a response here. It's like depolarization, repolarization.
Yeah.
And so the scary thing about it, being a parent, is, you know, because we can all say things that we remember that were great about growing up, but we can also remember things that may have shaped the way we are, you know. Raising our voice, tackling things head on, whereas we may have a spouse that keeps everything inside. They've never raised a voice, but then they've never, ever confronted an issue either.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that strikes me the most, and it's just, what is the answer? Because the bottom line is, nobody grows up with Charles Ingalls, and nobody grows up with.
He was never at home, anyways.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna say the Cosby Show anymore because. But the bottom line is, we all saw shows like that. We all thought, you know, wow, that's what a healthy. You know, when I was growing up, it was always, that's the type of home I wanted, was the Ingalls home and the picket fence and everybody working together, and there was no TV, no phone, no nothing. But you don't live in that environment. And then, so how are we supposed to offset those things that...
The way you offset them is you offset them. You intentionally decide that you're going to make the best possible impact on your kids as possible. And I would spend lots of time pouring positive affirmation in those kids and helping them feel that it is the safest environment they could possibly be in, And then let them experience that as they are watching mom and dad. That's in the way that you discipline them. It's in the way that you tuck them in at night. It's the way that you talk about each other. I mean, it's the whole gamut. It is the whole thing. And Patrick, here's what I realized. And I think I've said this before. And you can be the most perfect parent in the world. I'll still see them in therapy because you're not the only influence they have. Okay? And so what you've got to focus on is, while they are with me, I am going to do my dead level best. But remember, they are kids, and they have this kid-like brain. And when my dad called me a big dummy, do you think he wanted to crush me? No, that wasn't his intent. Not at all. That was his way of trying to encourage me. I know that. It was stupid, but that was his way of trying to encourage me. But that brain, that kid-like brain, locks that in, and you can have a perfect family, but that child can interpret things totally different the way you want them to. So, just continue to pour love and trust in it. I have a colleague who has a string of blessings that she gave her son from the time her son was born till even today. And I can't tell you what it was. Maybe I'll remember it or I'll bring it with me, but it's like, you're the head, not the tail. You're above, not below. And there was just this whole string of beautiful, beautiful blessings. And do they have a perfect marriage? No. No, they don't. But it's interesting because he is like a third grader now. And she'll be gone on an intensive, and she'll get a phone call, and he'll say, Mom, pray that prayer over me. They love it. They love it. It's nurturing their souls. And one day he was at a t-ball game, and his partner, his playmate, teammate, just did terrible, and he comes back, and he's all crying. You know how those kindergarten, he's crying, they didn't do well. And Jet is his name. And Jet put his hand on this kid's shoulder, and he says, can I tell you how God sees you? You're the head, not the tail. You're above, not below. And the very blessing that he had been receiving, he was able to get. Now, that is a very strong principle there, because imagine this. I don't have Kleenexes here. But what happens is that if in my family, if they pour all of that stuff in me, you're wonderful, we love you, you're significant, and I'm just stuffing those blessings down my shirt, okay? I'm stuffing them. They're great blessings, okay? And so whenever I am out in the world and I'm with my spouse and things aren't going well, I've got that reservoir. And so I can pull that out and I can give it to other people. But what happens is if we are devoid of those blessings and I don't have anything stuffed inside of me, here's how I'm going to face the world. You owe it to me. I'm not feeling loved, you make me feel loved. I'm not feeling trusted, you make me feel trusted. And you're responsible for what I'm feeling right now. And so I'm going to blame you, or I'm going to hold you accountable in some way. So again, all those blessings are supposed to flow down, and so that you keep giving it. You keep giving it. But if they don't give it, what happens is, if I were to be raised in an environment that was devoid of all of that, then when I get married to Janice, what am I going to do? Janice, I want you to do this for me. I'm going to feel better if you do this. I'm going to feel more loved, and you're responsible to make me feel loved. And if you don't make me feel certain love, you're the problem. Or I'm going to get that for my kids. My worth, my value is going to come from how my kids are behaving. But if I already have it, I don't need to suck it from Janice. I can give it. I don't need to suck it from my kids. I'm going to give it to them. And they're going to see that. The kids are going to see that. Okay. Yeah. Good. Both. Both. Do you guys do 5-day groups around here? Okay. There's a great group material, and it's based on the principles that we use out at the intensives. Okay? It's called the 5 Days to a New Marriage. And it basically starts off with, let's say, for instance, you go to one of your children, and we'll close up with this. And you say, you know what? A lot of times when I'm with you, I feel helpless, or I feel like a failure. And whenever I feel like that, I know, and then you share the coping style that you might do that's not helpful. I know what I do is I yell at you, and I try to control you, and I scream at you. But you know what? The truth about me is that I'm a compassionate, loving mother. And so what I want to do, and I want to practice, is just, I want to keep pouring good stuff inside of you. And so you have my permission that if I do that again, would you just remind me. And then you start pouring truth into them. Okay, go back to the 4 steps. It is, this is how I feel, this is how I act, this is the truth about me, and this is how I'm going to behave now. And so it's going to be something like, your child is misbehaving. And a whole brain child book is really good too, the whole brain child. Okay, so you let that child feel. They got to feel safe with that. And so then it is, okay, so can you tell me what you're feeling? And they're going to use this, what we call secondary emotions. I feel, angry, sad, happy, all that stuff. The more older they get, the more primary the emotions will be. Okay, so you feel like that. And so when you feel like that, what do you have a tendency to do? Okay, so what is the truth? And if they can't find the truth, as a parent, pour the truth in. You are loved. You are special. You are so important. And when you feel like that, what do you think you would do? Well, I think I'd go play. Okay. We'll go play. Okay, you hear it? So that's just one idea. But it's never too late. Say it and then do it.